Greetings, guys, girls, non-binary pals, and welcome back to another video. A conversation that has been happening a lot in recent years and is becoming more and more prevalent is the conversation around media literacy. Every single day, I will see a new tweet that will say, media literacy is dead. I will see them all the time. And I think that this is a conversation that we do need to have, and just look at some sort of like examples of what this sort of means and different places in which this is being said or needs to be applied. There's so much in between the lines reading that is just not taking place anymore. Like, there is so much just expecting everything to be spelt out and made extremely clear because people don't really put in the effort to think about it, to read into it, and to look anywhere beneath the surface, which is terrible, because like art exists to make you think. Like, there is always stuff that you need to like look into. There's a lot of stuff that is implied, that is inferred, like in movies and TV shows and stuff that can exist even in like, if it's a wide shot, if it's a close-up, what colors people are wearing, where they are, etc. And then like in books, there's a lot of stuff that's implied or like left unsaid, or there are important things that need to be like looked into and acknowledged, and people just kind of brush it off as unimportant and will not really take anything that is not given at face value. And this is a skill that is so important, and it's really upsetting to see that being lost. When this conversation does happen and come up, like a lot of people refer back to this Tumblr post that blew up like 10 or so years ago. It's this author versus English teacher diagram, and it's what the author meant and versus what your English teacher meant. And for instance, the curtains were blue. What your English teacher thinks: the curtains represent his immense depression and his lack of will to carry on. What the author meant: the curtains were fucking blue. That led to so many people being like, yeah, English teachers do overread stuff. Sometimes the curtains are just fucking blue. There's no reason to look into deeper details of these decisions, but it's like, when you're writing a book, you're telling a story and you only have so many words because, you know, you've got to keep your audience engaged, and you are like deliberately writing everything. Everything you are writing comes from somewhere in your brain. And if you are a good writer, all of those decisions do in fact mean something. Like, you are creating this world, you are telling the story, like everything is down to your own creation. And because you have such limited time and space, everything does mean something. Like, that is what happens when you are like reading a book, when you are watching a TV show, a movie, whatever. Like, there is meaning behind every decision. Like, everything has been thought through. There is a reason it is there. And because people started viewing media like this, and refusing to look further into things unless it was like explicitly explained to them, more and more pieces of media are doing that. They are explaining everything as a lot more people start to expect it. And that like validates not looking any deeper. So people are like less inclined to do it, and they're getting less skilled in it as media starts doing it more and more. And so it's just kind of like a losing battle because people are not developing this skill anymore because they just don't see the point in doing it. And because of it, the media has to change to accommodate because people just are not understanding. I personally am on book Twitter. I read a lot of books. I love being in fandom spaces on social media. I have been in them for the past 11 or so years now. And I enjoy dedicating my time to things that I love. And so I am on book Twitter. More specifically, I'm on All for the Game Twitter. So all the conversation I see revolves heavily around specifically that book series. And there is a lot, there's a lot of lack of media comprehension there, and it is infuriating. It's so frustrating. So I'm gonna give just like a brief sort of discussion about it because I've blocked people, so I don't have any examples to bring to the table because I don't have them screenshot. But effectively, right, these books revolve around trauma. They revolve around healing from trauma, dealing with trauma, running from trauma, etc., etc., etc. One of the characters in particular is like hated by a lot of people. Like, a lot of people call him an asshole. They call him mean for no reason. They don't give him like any lenience at all, despite the fact that his character, like, he literally grew up in a cult where he was being abused from the age of like 8 until he escaped after they broke his hand when he was 19. And like, so he's, you know, a bit harsh. He's a bit stern and like closed off. And people are like, he has no reason to be like that. He's being an asshole. It's like, he's really, firstly, not. And also, I think he deserves to be meaner. And it's this thing of like, he doesn't talk about his trauma. He doesn't disclose it. Like, you are given very little information about what he himself has been through, but a lot of it is implied. You're able to pick up a lot of what he's gone through because they do talk about it in a general sense a lot. And people just like refuse to give him empathy because he himself doesn't sit there and disclose everything he's been through. You shouldn't have to be told. You shouldn't have to be told that this character who you know has been abused his whole life and grown up in a cult is struggling and needs space and time to heal. Like, you should be able to understand why he is acting the way he is without having his entire abuse story spelled out piece by piece by piece to you. But I could sit here and talk about Kevin Day all day. I could do that. I actually, after this, am filming a video about all the books that I read over winter that I'm going to be uploading on my second channel. And I did do a big reread of this series. So if you want to hear a few of my thoughts about it, go check that out on Kiwi. Spelled with a Q, Q-I-W-I. Now that I've like gotten the rant about my heart and where I see it out of the way, let's move on to some actual examples that I have found on Twitter and have like actual proof of happening. And while I have your attention, I would also love to ask if you could please hit subscribe. Over 50% of you are regular viewers but are not subscribed. It genuinely helps out like so much. If you just hit subscribe, you are doing me a massive solid and you are really helping my channel and enabling me to keep doing this. And then also while you're down there, if you leave a like and comment your thoughts, leave your thoughts on media literacy and your favorite books and any misunderstandings you see taking place around media that you love, because I'd be really interested. It's such an interesting conversation. I would love to have it with you. Anyway, yeah, now that that is out of the way, let's carry on to some examples that I encountered on Twitter. Recently, there was this one tweet that blew up. It has like 230k likes now. I was seeing it multiple times a day for a few days on my book Twitter account. It really needs a bit of a discussion, and that is this tweet about this book called Tampa. So the tweet reads, "Never did a double take as hard as I did reading the back of this book. Like, what do you mean?" And the book is called Tampa. It's by Alyssa Nutting, and the cover of it is like pale pink fabric with like a buttonhole, and it's made to look like a vagina, and it's like really eerie. And then the back reads, "Celeste Price is 26 years old, beautiful, smart, married to a handsome man with money, and starting a new job as a junior high school teacher in suburban Tampa. Yet she harbors a dark secret. She is driven by singular sexual obsession, 14-year-old boys. As the school year begins, Celeste has chosen and seduced the naive Jack Patrick, a quiet, thoughtful boy in awe of his teacher. But when her lustful frenzy begins to spiral out of control, the insatiable Celeste bypasses each hurdle with swift thinking and shameless determination." From reading that and looking at the cover, I very much understand that this book is going to be disturbing. Nowhere in this is it romanticizing the idea. I'm reading this and immediately being like, oh, it's a horror. It's a thriller, it's a horror. Like, that is the genre. And it is. If you can't infer that by reading the blurb, which you should be able to do, then you very easily can check the genre, which is horror thriller. But so many people were just not understanding this or picking up this vibe from the combination of the very eerie cover art as well as that description. Like, people just did not gather that. And you see tweets that read, "Anyone who reads this is self-reporting. How is this not illegal? What the fuck? Check that woman's hard drive. I hate how media like this is considered sensational as opposed to predatory when the victim is male. I don't know, it doesn't sit right. Looking at the cover, I thought it might be about her getting raped because that cover would be so powerful in that context. But no, BookTok people are fantasizing about pedophilia. And like, these make me want to slam my head into the wall. Like, oh my God. It's so incredibly obvious that this is not a romance. Like, there's no nice writing. There's nothing in that blurb that makes it come across as a romance. And even like one of the pulled quotes on the back references that it goes inside like a disturbing mind. You know, like there's so much pointing to the fact that this is not a romantic book, that it is not looking at like a good thing. And especially when you look at that last tweet, right, of being like, the cover would have been powerful if it was about her getting raped. That is the point. She's just the rapist. Like, it is still about rape. That's why it is the cover, because that is still the point. Like, how are you looking at this and understanding that the cover is really powerful for a rape story and then being like, man, it's a bummer that it's not about rape? Just because she's the rapist doesn't mean that it's not. Like how are you reading the back of this book and not inferring that? And that comment in like regards to the previous one of like how it's sensationalized when, you know, the victim is a male instead of a female. Like, I just love those back to back of one person kind of being like, men can't be victims. Only women can be victims. So obviously it's not about rape. And then the next person being like, I can't believe that like they're pretending that women can't be rapists. Like, you're both wrong. How did you both miss the mark in such different ways? There was a great tweet in response to this that said, a lot of y'all need to stop self-inserting yourself into these books because you're preventing yourself from adequately understanding the material. And this is so true. Like, so many people look at books and just, you know, expect that the main character is going to be a good person. That is how a story goes. And that if the main character is not a good person, then the person who wrote the book is not a good person. Like, they are writing the book from their own perspective and with their own thoughts and their own morals. Like, that is not how it works. You are not reading this book as though you are the one committing these actions. It is not validating this behavior. You are meant to be reading this and feeling disturbed. You're meant to be like, oh my God, this is so incredibly fucked up. It's meant to make you uncomfortable. It's meant to make you feel icky. Like, that is the point. The intention is to bring to light how fucked up it is. It's to bring to light like how easy it is to manipulate people and like what it looks like from the other perspective of being a predator. Like, there are positives to these things as well. I think that there's such an interesting thing about psychology, and people are so fascinated in psychology. It's like why we listen to true crime stuff and we watch documentaries and things. And those aren't because they make us feel good and because we agree with the actions of a criminal. It's just fascinating. The human mind is fascinating. You're not meant to agree with her. You're meant to be uncomfortable. You aren't meant to view it as though like you are her and committing these actions, but you are meant to view it through your own moral compass in order to understand the complexities and depravities of these actions. But you are not meant to be rooting for this character. This brings me to my next example that I encountered, which is about BoJack Horseman. Now, BoJack is one of my favorite shows of all time. I will go so far as saying like BoJack is one of the greatest television shows of all time. It is phenomenal. If you haven't watched BoJack, I like highly recommend it. I could sit here and talk about it forever, but I'll give you like a little bit of just understanding so you know what we're talking about. If you aren't aware, BoJack is an adult cartoon about like a world where, you know, animals and people live together, but they're all like people, you know, and the main character is a horse named BoJack Horseman. His backstory is that like he starred in a sitcom in the 90s when he was younger. It's now obviously like 20 years later. Each episode of BoJack focuses on a couple of different things, and they are all very strong social and political commentaries. There is a massive focus on mental health and trauma and using that to excuse your actions. It also has like so many discussions about abuse, power dynamics, addiction, misogyny, the sexualization and objectification of children in the media, capitalism, ego, and so much more. Like, it discusses everything to a degree, really. And it does a really, really good job of it while also still managing to be funny. It's like incredible. And as a bonus, it also has really good asexual representation, which we love to see because it is rare. So if you are into like dark comedy that has like some of the best on-screen social commentary I've ever seen, like, please do check it out if you haven't already. About a month back, I encountered a tweet that mentioned how a lot of TV shows double as Zionist propaganda. And I saw in the replies, someone mentioned BoJack. And I was like, what? What do you mean? How? Where? What is Zionist propaganda about BoJack Horseman? And the example that they gave is of a conversation that happened in one episode that lasted like 5 seconds. It was literally like 2 lines of dialogue. And that was it. That was the whole conversation. That's the only time it's mentioned in the entire show. And straight away, I feel like that completely like diminishes what propaganda is. Like, it completely takes away from how big that word is. You cannot call a 5-second conversation propaganda, and you especially cannot use that to advertise the entire show as being propaganda. That is really taking away the weight of that word. Like, we need to stop doing that. There is so much of like diminishing of the meaning of words that happens on the internet, and it's like really frustrating and incredibly problematic. We have ruined so many important words through just casually throwing them around. That is not propaganda. That is not even close to what propaganda was. If they had like an Israeli flag in the back of every episode, or even like just every now and then, if there was like an Israel flag on the wall, sure, then we can call it propaganda and use it as an example for the entire show. A 5-second conversation? Like, you can say that that's not okay, and is like not a good thing to do, but you can't call it propaganda. And even still, I'm going to make the argument for how it absolutely was not even a Zionistic take. It wasn't even a pro-Israel thing that happened. And I feel like you are completely missing the entire everything of not only the entire episode, but like the show in general. Like, if you took away from this conversation that they were pushing a Zionistic message. And I'll explain to you that now. So interestingly enough, I have been doing my second rewatch of BoJack for the past year, and I happened to get to this episode like last night. So really helpful. It was completely fresh in my mind. So I have all the examples here of basically, to explain the scene in its entirety. BoJack is on a book tour with Diane, who wrote his biography, and they are doing like a press conference type thing, so he's answering a bunch of questions, and one of the people stand up and he asks the question like, what is your take on Israel-Palestine? And BoJack kind of sits there for a second and goes, I think a 2-state solution would be best because that pleases everybody. That's the entirety of what happens. That's the exchange. And so this person came onto Twitter and was like, that's a very pro-Zionist take. You can't be saying that. I can't believe they're pushing that. Like, but if you take 2 seconds to think about it, right? Like, BoJack is not a good person. He's not a good person at all. I could sit here and talk about that and give my opinion on this, but I was going through the quote tweets for so long, and I feel like I'm going to share some other people's words about it just because I got a good laugh out of it. And because they got completely like eaten into in the quote retweets because they deserved to. No, yeah, it actually makes total sense that the creator of a show would use a pedophile rapist character in his show as a vessel for his own political beliefs. If your take from BoJack Horseman was, I should listen to BoJack, it's too late for you. You don't need to watch any more TV. You need to stop watching things at all. Go play with blocks or something. Start there and let us us know how that's going. I mean, BoJack also tried to fuck a high schooler. I don't think we should predict a creator's beliefs off of a villain they designed the show around. Me when I watched the show with my head up my ass. And then someone just saying, bring back media literacy now. And like, yeah, again, maybe you don't know BoJack, but like literally the entire point of the show is that he is a bad person. He is a bad person. He like had sex with his like on-screen daughter, like his daughter figure. He like had sex with her. Then when he was feeling down, like took her on a 2-week drug bender. And when she overdosed, he waited 17 minutes before calling an ambulance so that he wouldn't get in trouble for giving her the drugs. He groomed a 17-year-old and tried to have sex with her. He like is a bad person who continuously does bad things. He is not a good guy. The whole point of BoJack is that everyone is complex. Most of the characters fucking suck to some extent. You know, like the whole point of the show is a commentary on wealth and status and trauma and like excusing behavior, etc., etc. Like that is the point. If BoJack says a political stance, you are not meant to agree with him. You're not meant to agree. That's not the point at all. Yeah, you should not be taking your like moral and political cues from BoJack fucking Horseman. And if you are, you should not be watching the show, because if this is something that you agree with him in and you think that you're meant to be agreeing with him, does that mean you've agreed with everything else he's said and done? Because you're not meant to do that. And like on top of that, there's even an extra layer to this, right? Okay, so this episode in general, like the context of the episode is there's two things. The main plot, which is that there is a celebrity who has been called out for sexually abusing his assistants, and 6 of his assistants have come forwards to accuse him of that, but obviously he buys them off. He's gotten away with it. So Diane comes out and she tries to come after him. She tries to take him down. No one wants to hear her out. No one wants to help her because he has money. And he's basically like, I'm always going to win because everyone loves me, because he is a man with money who can do whatever the fuck he wants, and he'll continue to get away with it, and everyone will like do what he says because they want to be successful and they don't want to harm their own careers by trying to take down this man. So that's the main plot of the episode. And the subplot of the episode is that Todd, one of the characters, he switches place with the prince and he's like missing for most of the episode, but there is a war in the country that this prince is from. And at the end he comes out and he's like all scraggled and like in a panic, and he says like, I think I might have accidentally made the war worse and started a genocide. This is massive that we need to be talking about this and doing something about it. And everyone's like, shut the fuck up. That's not important right now. Who cares? We have our own issues to deal with. And it's talking about like their own personal issues. And I think that in itself is a really good commentary on the fact that war is sensationalized in the US. You know, like the entire episode is, there's a war happening, but who cares about that? Let's talk about some Hollywood shit. You know, like the reason that conversation happened at all, because, you know, you might be asking like, why did they even insert and ask that question in the first place? It's because it tied to that subplot of the fact that people don't give a shit. People pretend to give a shit about war, about genocide. Ultimately, they care about the glamour of Hollywood and petty drama much more. Also, why BoJack gave that opinion in the first place of the 2-state solution is that he is going for good press. He's going for like, he wants to secure the most amount of jobs. He wants, you know, it's what celebrities do anyway. You know what I mean? It's like realistic that like people pick a neutral stance because they don't want to lose an audience. You know? So overall, the question was important to show that. It was important to the subplot. It was important to BoJack's character. Like, the entire thing, it made sense. And it wasn't that difficult to watch the episode and watch the show in general and understand that you weren't meant to agree with him. It tied into the plot of the story and does not reflect the morals of anyone involved. Calling this Zionist propaganda not only reduces the word propaganda into something so much smaller than it is, but it also completely overlooks the complexities of this conversation, this episode, and the show in its entirety. Like, it is a complex show and you need to put your thinking hats on if you are going to watch it. It's very, very important to go into this show with like a critical lens and like actually absorb what they're saying and what they're not saying. And they're very on the nose about things as well. Like it's not difficult to understand what they're trying to say and do. So I really need you to try harder. One of my favorite recent examples of poor media literacy is all the conservatives reacting to Kendrick Lamar's Super Bowl performance. Because it's so funny. I don't know if you've seen it. I hadn't, because I don't care about the Super Bowl, obviously. But I went and watched it after seeing these tweets. And it makes me laugh so much. So basically, during Kendrick's Super Bowl performance, he has Samuel L. Jackson dressed up as Uncle Sam, who is the representation of the American government. All of his dancers are dressed in red, white, and blue, and there is a point in the performance where they like stand around and form the shape of the American flag. And a couple like tweets that he got in response to this from conservatives are, we went from kneeling during the national anthem to a halftime show showcasing USA flag colors. We are so back. A few years ago, they were endorsing burning the USA flag, and now Samuel L. Jackson is Uncle Sam at the Super Bowl. Hollywood is desperately trying to get America to pay attention to them again. We are so back. Finally, NFL joins in celebrating US flag instead of disrespecting during halftime. Pardon me if he said something offensive, but the flag displayed by the performance was amazing. I didn't pay attention to the lyrics. Finally, a non-woke satanic halftime show. Kendrick Lamar showing off the American flag. I love this. It's so funny because like I refuse to believe these people actually watched the performance. Like that one person who was like, I didn't pay attention to the lyrics. Even that is fucking hilarious because you can surely tell by the way they are moving, the actions they are doing, the lighting, like everything. But you know, I don't understand how you can miss the point so bad. Like how do you miss the point that badly? Like it was spelled out so obviously and you still managed to have it go completely over your head. It's so impressive. It's so impressive. This is the most blatant display of anti-patriotism I've seen like in a long time. Like it is so clearly anti-patriotic and yet this at the start, Kendrick literally like sits on a car and says, "The revolution is about to be televised. You picked the right time, but the wrong guy."
The revolution about to be televised. You picked the right time, but the wrong guy.
How are you getting a pro-American government stance from that statement? Just that statement alone. And he said that very, very clearly. And then after he does that, he performs, you know, one of his songs, which then moves into Samuel L. Jackson dressed as Uncle Sam.
No, 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 no! Too loud, too reckless, too ghetto. Mr. Lamar, do you really know how to play the game? Then tighten up!
Nobody pray for me.
And then it goes and shows his dancers forming the American flag with him standing in the middle of it. And he starts humble. It's this moment, obviously, that some of these tweets are referencing, saying, oh my God, it's incredible they're showing the American flag, whereas a few years ago they were kneeling on the flag. And it's like, you guys are so embarrassing. It's so embarrassing how stupid you look. Oh my God. Thinking just because Uncle Sam pointed at the American flag means that it's turned into something that's like pro-patriotic. Like that's the point, guys. Did you listen to the words he said? It's about conformity. It's about the fact that like the American government is telling you you have to be quiet, you have to hide who you are, you have to shove your culture and who you are into a closet, you have to conform in order to be American. Like you have to act a specific way. Sit down, be quiet, be humble, and like play the game. Right? I just don't understand how you can miss that message at all. Like this is very blatantly showing that the American government is telling you to shut up, sit down, and play the game. Especially talking to like young Black people. That is so clearly the point. How do you miss it? Like, how could he have been any more obvious in that message? Even if you don't listen to the lyrics, if you just like look at the lighting and the way they are moving and dancing, and like they do the like power fist multiple times, like how are you overlooking this message so badly? It's almost impressive. Kendrick Lamar has spent his entire career talking about issues young Black Americans face. His entire career has been talking about politics and like racism and the way that that impacts you. And I don't know why anyone would think that this performance would be any different to that at all. And it's so funny because like it must be so frustrating to create a performance that like so obviously tells a story that you want it to tell and have people completely just not get it. Like that must be so frustrating. How do you choreograph something with such explicit meaning and intent and have so many people overlook it and praise it for being the opposite of what it is? But at the same time, it must also be incredibly funny to have the people you were criticizing share your performance and praise it while they're being mocked and laughed at and criticized without even realizing it. Like they are sharing a piece of media, like a music, like a performance, and saying, look how incredible this is, when the entire purpose of it is criticizing them and they don't even know it. Like you do have to laugh. You can have people criticizing you to all hell and just like not even know. Like the level of ignorance is so impressive. Having thousands of Republicans applaud you for portraying the American dream when I mean, he is, right? That's the thing. That's what's so interesting about it. And what must be, I guess, satisfying in the way of like, if they're not going to understand, it kind of is proving the point of like all these Republicans being like, wow, look, he's portraying the American dream. He's showing this patriotism. Isn't that amazing? I'm so glad to see it. And what they're applauding is racism and the American government forcing you to conform and sit down, shut the fuck up, not show your roots, not be who you are. Like that is the American dream. And by sharing it and saying that that's what he's doing, you're right. And I just think that that in itself is very powerful, but like still extremely frustrating in the sense of like, I don't know how you are missing the point so bad. This is for you. You're meant to learn something. These people just like refuse to learn. They like will not allow themselves to see anything other than what they want to see. And it... Since we've moved into a more musical place in this conversation, there is one more thing that I want to discuss. That is something I am very, very passionate about. And that is Halsey's album, The Great Impersonator, that came out back in October. And this album is one of my favorite albums of all time. Every Halsey album is one of my favorite albums of all time, but this one in particular it's phenomenal. The lyricism, the musicality, the artistry, the concept, like everything about it it's flawless. It's beautiful. It deserves so much more recognition than it has. Halsey never misses, right? Like I have been a fan of her since pre-Badlands, so like 2015, and every single album is incredible. The concept, the artistry, like they have something they want to say and they fucking say it. It's raw, it's real, it's honest, and it is true to who they are and what they want to tell. But it is important to note before we get into this and what we're going to talk about, it is not a pop album. This is not a commercial album. It is not a to play on the radio album. That is not its intention. As I said, Halsey always has something to say and they will say it. They don't intend to make popular music. That is not what they set out to do. They set out with a vision, a passion, ideas, something that they want to share, and they do that. Halsey is not a pop artist. She's not a pop girly. They have released a pop album or two in the past because that is what they wanted to do at the time. That is how they wanted to tell what they wanted to tell. But they're not a pop artist. They have never been like a pop artist. That's never been who they are or her intention. But anyways, moving into what this album is. Basically, a couple of years ago, Halsey got sick. Like, very, very sick. Diagnosed with a few different illnesses, and one of those were leukemia and lupus. And they were told they were dying. In this fear, not only, was she afraid of dying, but also her partner and father of her child left after being abusive and cheating on her. And he left because they were sick and it was not beautiful. And he didn't want to like deal with that. And he left, which made her a single mom of a toddler. And now she's been told that she might die, which means orphaning her child. So, you know, all round, not great. Not great. This album is about that. It is not pretty. It is not lovely. It is tragic. It's beautiful. It's painful. It's upsetting. It's devastating to listen to. There are certain songs on this album that I cry when I listen to every time. When I listened to it the first time, I was like cried the whole way through. Like, it's beautiful in such a tragic way. It's her fear, it's her love, her trauma, pain, parts of her that she never got to share. It's goodbye, it's hello, it's everything in between. It was not written to be on the radio. It was written because she thought it was the last thing she was ever going to write. It was meant to be her last album because they thought they were going to die. That's the story of this album. And although the response was more positive than negative, there obviously were some negative reviews in there. And a lot of that negativity was completely unwarranted and was based off of the fact of like, they just did not understand the album. They refused to listen to it critically and like actually think about the story that was being told and just listen to it from a commercial pop radio perspective. And I am going to focus in particular on this one review done by this popular YouTube reviewer because it makes me so mad. I've never seen someone miss the point and miss the message of something so bad as this guy, all right? So here he states how it's annoying to have to listen to the same mid-ballad 3 times because it's separated and put in between songs.
Like on Letter to God 1983, which oddly enough is the second of 3 versions of this same song in the goddamn track list. Yeah, to finish this album off, you have to hear the same mid-ballad 3 times.
I need to take some deep breaths because, oh my God, how do you miss the point of something so badly? Like, I don't know how you can look at this artistic choice and be like, why did you just do the same song 3 times and just separate it out? Bro, you are meant to be you are meant to be a music reviewer. Like, you class yourself as being like professional. And I honestly think it's incredibly impressive to overlook the intention behind this and why it was done and like what it means. I'm going to explain real quick what this is, all right? So the song that is split up 3 times is called Letter to God. So there's Letter to God 1974, Letter to God 1983, and Letter to God 1998, right? And they're split up with like a few songs in between them. And it is an iteration of the same song, but that's just because it's the same song broken up into 3 pieces and then separated out by other songs, which is intentional and incredibly important for the flow of the story. Like, an album is meant to be a story from start to finish. The first Letter to God is set when she is a child, and she feels unloved by her family. She feels disposable, and they just want attention. They want love. They want to feel valued. And there was a kid that she went to school with that got leukemia. And the lyrics of this version are, so she made a prayer that night. I said, please God, I want to be sick. Please God, I want to be loved. Don't want to be somebody that they want to get rid of. And immediately this song follows into a song about falling in love whilst being sick and how that's terrifying and scary because you're afraid that you're going to hurt them and leave them, and like how being sick will impact a relationship. And then after that, you get the song that is about their diagnosis and how, you know, it's just an incredibly difficult time and it's the end of the world, but it's like not the end of the world. And then you move into the second Letter to God, which goes, please God, I don't want to be sick. Please God, I want to be loved. Don't want to be somebody that you want to get rid of, right? Very important shift in lyrics. It also talks about how, like, wondering if this is just the prayer that she made when she was a child being delayed. It references the previous one being like, yeah, when I was 5, I asked to get leukemia because a kid in my class did and I wanted to be loved. Why the fuck did it take you 20 years to make that happen? And then the next section of the album delves into all of the other things I talked about before of like just family trauma. It's reflecting on like her parents. It's reflecting on growth, childhood friendship, the love that they have for their child and the fear of leaving him behind. It covers so much, and it is the most heartbreaking thing in the entire world. Oh my God. Before changing into the last piece of Letter to God, which makes me fucking cry every time. It starts with Ender, her son, talking, like her and him having a conversation. This final piece talks about an identity struggle and never knowing if she was actually loved, being like used versus being loved and accepted and valued, and being like really confused about that, but knowing that she loves her son and he loves her as well, and being afraid and upset that she's going to leave him, but not having that choice. And the lyrics change here to, please God, oh, you've got to be sick. I'm finally loved. I finally found somebody I don't want to get rid of. Like, that fucking hurts, you know? The lyrical change between 1, 2, and 3, and like there are other lyrical changes as well. Like all the verses are different, and the chorus is longer, and there are other parts that are similar that change as well. These were just the part that I used. I could talk about this all day. These 3 songs that are the same song, I could talk about it forever. The artistic choice and how they're presented, the rawness of it, like everything about it is so deliberate, and the fact it is separated out is so important to the flow of the album. Like, you cannot have that as one song. It just doesn't work. It doesn't work as one song. Like, its point is to move the album along. The point is to show life moving. It is to show the development of what's happening and how we ended up where we did. Like, this is the second to last song on the album before it gets to the goodbye. They're like, I hope they spell my name right in the paper. Like, it's so important to have them separated out like this. And it is absolutely beyond me to sit here and call it the same mid-ballad 3 times. Like, how are you going to sit here and call yourself like a music reviewer if you cannot understand such a simple artistic choice? Did you listen to the lyrics? Were you paying attention to the album at all? Like, you don't have to like it in order to understand why this happened. And it's especially interesting in his case of like, he made a video, like an entire video, talking about connecting with Ethel Cain's post about a lack of audience being genuine about art. And it is a terrible look for you to sit here and talk about how people do not understand art and do not connect with art or like make deep art anymore if you're completely overlooking this very important and very obvious artistic choice. After this, he says possibly my favorite, and by that I mean least favorite, thing of all time that's fucking hilarious, which is
This entire record has the worst case of main character syndrome I've heard on any pop album in 2024.
Like, imagine saying that an album you wrote about dying and being afraid of orphaning your child is giving main character syndrome. What? Like, in general, what is an album if not to be telling your own story? Like, I don't understand how you can look at any album and be like, but you're giving main character syndrome. That's literally the point. You are the main character of your album. That's what music is. It's meant to be personal. If you were not the main character of your album, you probably didn't write your album. Like, the entire point is to be personal, to share your story, to connect with an audience. It's to validate other people's emotions and experiences. Like, Halsey sharing this is now giving validation to other people who are experiencing this. How much media is there about this topic that is like genuine and raw? Not very much. How much music is there about this? Not very much at all. Like, my favorite thing about Halsey is how raw and honest and real their music is. Their albums have helped me so much because the stories that they have told through them have been so validating to my own experiences. The reason I have 2 tattoos for Hopeless Fountain Kingdom is because this album, all about like leaving an abuser and working through an abusive relationship and the trauma and everything that comes with that, resonated with me so much. It came out at the time when I left my abuser, and it was exactly what I needed to hear. That was a raw story. That was like something that they went through. They were the main character because it's their own story that they were telling that I then connected to and found it validated me. And this album does that for people who are going through these similar experiences. It's about understanding. It's about human connection. And I don't know how you can sit here and look at someone like just connecting with people and calling it main character syndrome, and looking at someone talking about dying and being afraid of dying and orphaning their child and calling it angst.
Halsey is just hell-bent on making sure the audience knows just how dark and tortured and edgy she is. Really, she only seems to be using them as a means of laundering untold amounts of just, again, childish angst.
To completely overlook the entire purpose of the album and boil it into such a small word is so impressive, to be honest. Like, I don't understand how you can sit here and like listen to something that is this intense and this powerful and just be like, she's just trying to be edgy though. Like, turn your listening ears on for 2 seconds, especially if you were claiming to connect with art and have a good understanding of art and music. Like, you need to actually be willing to listen to what people are saying. You need to be able to pick apart and understand the artistic choices that are being made. He sits here and says that like it's annoying that she's putting songs on the album that are unfinished, because they would never make it onto like a polished mainstream album. Like, this is not a polished mainstream album, literally the point. And the songs that are done like that for a fucking reason. Like, he specifically mentions Life of the Spider. That is a draft version. He's like, I don't understand why she did that. It's stupid. It's stupid.
Not only due to the fact that this record subjects listeners to multiple indulgent cuts that sound like messy demos and just would not make it onto a more respectable release that was actually well conceptualized, most notably the draft track of Life of the Spider.
Life of the Spider is a draft version because it is raw. It is a raw song. It is stripped to the bone. It is vulnerable. The whole point is that they are vulnerable. They are sitting there with nothing but themselves and the piano in a vulnerable state without it being polished, because they are not polished. It is about a partner abusing them and then leaving them to die. Yeah? It's like, it's painful. It's about being told that they are hideous because they are sick, that they have to hide themselves from the world, and that it is an inconvenience for them to die because that means he has to take her outside. Like, that's not meant to be polished. That's not meant to be pretty. It's meant to be stripped. It's meant to be raw. It is meant to cut you deep. And if you were listening to that song with those lyrics, with that emotion, and being like, I don't understand why it's a draft version though, I need you to rethink your career. It's reflection and understanding and pain, and the fact that you can overlook that and then come around and say people need to be more artistic. Like, what are you doing, bro? What are you doing? It is media literacy that is lacking here. But when you are saying that this is your job and you have good media literacy and are unable to read an entire album, what are you doing? What are you doing? Screw your head on, bro. Finishing this off by ranking the album a 1 and saying that the lyrics are just making sure everyone knows how dark and edgy she is pushes me over the absolute edge. She was dying. She was dying. They were dying. It was a dark time. You think the lyrics aren't going to be fucking angsty? Like, come on, bro. Boiling this album down to angst and overlooking all the artistic decisions that they made is so insensitive and so ignorant. I can't even fathom how you were able to do that. Like, it feels like just having a personal vendetta against Halsey at this point, because like, I don't understand how you can miss the point so bad. I could go on longer about this album, but basically, like, in general, I think that you need to listen to things and pay attention to them, because when he went in and listened to this, he was purely listening to it from the perspective of the great impersonator. He was listening to it to listen to the vibes of the people she said she was inspired by. So like, he was listening to like trying to find the Stevie Nicks in the song she said was inspired by Stevie Nicks and like that sort of thing. And that's the only thing he took into consideration when reviewing this album. And I think if you're going into something looking for only one thing and then overlooking everything else, like, you've done a bad job. You have not understood the media that you are consuming. Things are not one level. They are not one dimensional. Obviously, like, they talked about how this album was inspired by a bunch of people that inspired her. That was the point of the sound, but it wasn't the point of the album. Like, what did you think that she went in there and just put out like bullshit, boring lyrics that were just angsty for no reason and just wanted to make it sound cool? Like, that wasn't the intention. You can't go into any album with just looking at one particular thing, you know? Like, you have to take it in for everything that it is. And like, if you're going to call yourself a music reviewer, you have to do your job properly and like look at every single aspect of something and not just a surface level thing of your expectations. You have to go in non-biased and you have to pay attention to every element. Ultimately, like, there's such a lack of empathy and desire to understand things. People don't want to have to put in the work. They just want things to be easy. And you see that through how many people just like use ChatGPT now for everything. Like, why would I use my brain if I could get a robot to do it for me and have someone break it down and make it easier? And it's just so upsetting because, like, lacking the desire to look deeper into art and like pick it apart and find new things is so sad. Like, that is one of the most beautiful parts of being alive, right? Like, my favorite thing ever is to like reread books that I love, because every time I read it, I notice more things. You get a better understanding of the surroundings and the characters and the things that take place. And like, I love pulling things apart and picking things apart and like diving deep into them and like finding hidden meanings and stuff. And I think that like, if you are not allowing yourself to do that or never giving yourself the time to learn how to, you are really like denying yourself of such a beautiful part of art. If all we do to art is boil it down to its most basic surface level, we're just missing out on so much beauty. And if we get rid of all that depth, it's just everything becomes so bleak. If we scrutinize people for sharing their emotions and their stories in unconventional ways, we are limiting our capacity to empathize, and we are limiting our capacity to have conversation and like learn from each other. And I think that those are the most beautiful things about being alive, is conversation and learning and sharing. And I think that like making people do it on such a surface level is like, it just makes everything boring, you know? Sometimes the curtains are blue because it's the color of her mother's eyes. Sometimes a character is named Katniss because it means you will never go hungry when she is around. And sometimes a boy wants to grow a peach tree because for the first time in his life, he sees a future for himself. Sometimes you have to look deeper than a first glance. Pretty much always you have to look deeper than a first glance. You cannot expect everything to be explained to you. You have to use your own initiative, your wise mind, your thinking cap, whatever the fuck you want to call it, and you have to search for answers yourself. And sometimes it's going to be tricky. Sometimes you might even come out with a different answer than someone else, and that's when you discuss, and that's when you try to learn from each other. If you are denying yourself of doing that and you are just looking at things surface level, you are missing out on so much beauty, and you are missing out on so much of humanity. I really hope that this is something that we like start doing more of and paying more attention to. I think that it's lost a lot in the education system these days, which is really upsetting. I think the education system has failed a lot of people. I think media dumbing shit down has also done a number on a lot of people. And I just think we need to have more conversations about the media that we consume. I think that's one of my favorite parts of social media, is that like that those conversations do happen. It's one of my favorite parts of fandom spaces, is that like you do have these conversations. And I think that it's really important, and like a really cool thing to have is like sharing things with people and having conversations about them. And I highly encourage we do more of that, because it's important to develop a deeper understanding of not only what we consume, but also the world around us and the people in our lives as well. Please let me know your thoughts on this topic. Have some discussions in the comments about the things that I had a conversation about, or like medias that you enjoy and perspectives and ideas that you have. I would be super interested to hear what you have to talk about. I spoke about Halsey for far too long. I'm so sorry, but also not really. I could talk about Halsey forever, and I'm not going to apologize for it. A massive thank you to my Kiwi Cat patrons: Bobby, Ellie, Chris, Samuel, Knitting Menace, Radsack, Mr. Noodle, Lady Nutbar, Ella, Queen Glimmer, River, Phenomenally, Jesse, Phil the Duck, Uh-Oh, It's Craiglow, Blaze, Blue Kitsune 24, M.A. Ping the Games, Joy, L. James D, Prismatic, and Beckett. I love and appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for joining. If you would like to become a patron, it starts at £1 a month, and for that you get my videos 1 to 5 days early and with no ads for those days. So if you would like to watch my videos without any pesky ads, you can go do that there at patreon.com/savvycat or using the link in the description. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram, the Queer Kiwi, and Twitter, that Queer Kiwi. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Stay safe. Keep fighting. I love you. Mwah.
When you close your eyes